If you're looking for some straight-up marketing advice that's super chilled and also a bit of a laugh, then grab yourself a drink and get ready for Marketing and Margaritas, a podcast that makes marketing entertaining. Brought to you by Rebel Nation, direct from regional Queensland.
Hello and welcome to Marketing Margaritas. I am joined by Lee Brake today, and we are going to be talking about how to identify and use tone of voice in your marketing. It's something that we've been getting a lot of FAQs about recently, like from clients, but also training new staff members. It's one of those things where when you get it, it's great, but trying to tell someone how to do it is really hard.
It is.
So I thought, fuck it, I'll just have you on the podcast and then you can do that part and then I'll get them to listen to it.
Okay, that sounds good. That sounds
Excellent.
really good.
Yeah, thanks, Lee.
Yeah.
So obviously you're in comms at council at the moment, but you've been a writer and an editor for a long time for different types of publications. We're good mates. We've worked together in all different capacities as well. And I've always really admired your writing ability, but I think also that you do have such a good, chameleon sounds like a bad word in a sense sort of thing, but like your ability to just slip into different personalities and tones of voice. I know that's something that like I work hard at as well, and I really appreciate that you understand it and do it really well. So that's why you're here to solve that problem for me. And teach my team and my clients, and that'd be great.
Okay, no worries.
Yeah, all
Happy
good.
to help.
Fantastic, thanks, Lee.
Yeah, too easy. But like it is hard. Like tone of voice is hard, and to be honest, I think it comes more naturally to other people than others. And you got to work at it, and it's something you got to sort of sit down. I wouldn't say practice, though practice does make perfect. But I think you've just got to find a way to get into the zone, think about it. And
so you got to be conscious of doing.
Yeah, definitely.
So
and not just write as yourself. Go, all right, who is my audience? What am I trying to say here? And how am I trying to say it? Yeah, go back to basics.
Okay, before we get right into it though, I just want to give our audience a little bit, like obviously I know you pretty well.
Yeah, okay.
But I just want everyone else to get to know you a little bit more. So you can give us a bit of a rundown about your comms career.
Okay, it's long.
If you can remember. I was going to say,
long.
can you remember back that far?
But pretty much I did journalism at university, love writing. I also did history. I love storytelling.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, I majored in history and journalism.
That's really useful history major.
Yeah, I was better at history than I was at journalism, but there's no work in history.
No.
No whatsoever. So yeah, I went to journalism, and luckily I had a teacher at university who worked at the Daily Mercury, and she said, yep, there's actually a features job here. You can work part-time, write features and study. So that was perfect out of school. And I fell in love with features writing pretty early on. That was, to be honest, that was probably some of the hardest writing I ever had to do.
Why is that?
Well, literally you would be given something to write based on an ad someone had sold. So it would be, the perfect example would be like, this is Louise, the pie lady, who's taken a half-page ad, and we've promised her a half-page feature.
Yep.
So you've got to write and find something really exciting about
pies.
Louise and her pies, and
make it interesting.
Make it interesting. Make it was good. And as someone that was a young writer, I also had a lot of enthusiasm for it. So you'd work really hard. And it was that finding a hook. Like I remember we had some guy and he had a machinery business or something, and to me it wasn't particularly interesting, but I went and interviewed him, and his office was set up as like a full man cave, and he had pool tables and bars and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah, right.
And so I remember writing the story, and I wrote it pretty much like, this is a fun company, this is a fun guy, this is where we were sitting, and I described all that and then got into the business. So it was sort of that, talking tone of voice, that was sort of part of it, that finding the fun aspect of
well, and that's the thing, if you want people to be interested in what you're writing, you need to be interested in what you're writing. Like you have to find the interesting thing. I know sometimes for me, sometimes I'll actually just be writing something and it's kind of like I'm actually getting a bit of a flavour for it, and then I'll scrap the first like 2 paragraphs because then it gets interesting.
Yeah, 100%. And look, we'll get back to that later. Back to where I was. I was feature writer, did that for almost a year, and then I was writing quite a lot of freelance on the side. I was writing for travel magazines and fishing magazines. One of my first loves was fishing, so I wrote quite a lot of fishing features, and when the editor of a fishing magazine in Queensland finished up, he recommended me for the job. So I got poached for that, and so pretty much found myself editing a fishing magazine. I was still able to write freelance for other magazines, nationals and that, which I loved, and did that for 5-6 years.
I was to say, that was years. I
did that for quite a long time. It was an amazing job. I got to fly all over Australia and go and review different fishing trips and fishing lodges.
God, what a hard life you must have led.
It was sensational. Unfortunately, it didn't pay the bills quite as well as I would have liked, being the magazine industry what it was and what it is in this day and age. So yeah, I did that for a long time, loved it, and then when I was starting a family, I realised I needed to get more of a secure, well-paying job.
A real job.
Time
to get a real job.
Everyone says that. Yeah, you have to get a real job. So I went and worked for the public service, PR, and doing council. So I now work for Mackay Regional Council and have done so for about 8 years now. I'm actually the communications coordinator there at the moment. And yeah, look, I love that. To be honest, it's not as fun as flying around the country writing fishing articles.
I feel like people could guess that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think you're letting out any state secrets to council just there.
But it's also good because it's such a varied role. Like, you're never doing
Oh my
the
God,
same
council
thing.
does so much, man.
Exactly.
I think you started, I was only there for another, 6 months or a year or whatever,
we had
overlapping between the two of us. Yeah, there's so much variety there. There's so much that happens.
And I'm lucky in the fact that my portfolio covers things like Festival of Arts, the MEC, libraries, art space, sports and recreation, lots of things that are quite fun. So I get to write in different things. I'm not an artsy person, so yeah, talking point of view and voice, it's hard to write about art, but I try.
And that's I thought this would be good though too, because like back in the day, writing those stories for businesses and then writing for different types of magazines, etc., editing other people's work, and then now at council, it's not just writing as council.
No.
There's so many facets for council, so there's so many different audiences and different tones of voice, etc., they need to know, and that's why I really wanted you here for this topic, because I thought, I just feel, and like we've had a couple of conversations with some actual drinks, which have always been quite interesting, and if we could record them, they maybe wouldn't be as interesting, but just thought, this would be a good topic to delve in with too. With you.
It is a good topic. It's very interesting.
Okay, so just before we move on though, I always love asking people this. So on you still, what actually got you into comms in the first place? So you said you did journalism and history. Why did you get into journalism?
So this is actually a really good story, and I'm glad you put this in here because I think I was in grade 7 or 8 at school, and back then I used to read fishing magazines, and I remember reading an article by a bloke by the name of Ken Steen, and Ken wrote this...
I even remember the name.
I remember the name.
Wow.
And anyway, Ken wrote this article, and it was about catching this massive barramundi, but he actually wrote the article from the point of view of the lure.
Oh, right.
So pretty much,
out there dangling by itself.
Well, this lure came from Ireland or something. He picked it up while he was travelling Ireland, brought it back to Australia, painted it, changed the hooks on it and all this. But the point of view of the story, the tone of voice, was pretty much this lure going, this big bearded Aussie dude just walked in and grabbed me off a shelf, took me back, ripped my hooks off, painted my beautiful brown trout this horrible gold colour, and next thing I know I'm being thrown into a creek and rah, rah, rah. And it was really good. Pretty much finished the article up by saying how he now sits in a trophy cabinet with a photo and enjoying his retirement. But it was just such a...
That's so cute.
It was just a really cool...
Creative.
So creative.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking then, I thought, I love that. It also got me thinking, there's always a different way to write a story that you might not have thought of yet. Like, what's a way that you could write the same story from a different perspective that would make it really cool?
100%.
Something's original.
Okay, so that's what got you into writing in the first place, was just being inspired by another writer.
I read that article and I went, this is something that I would like to do. Then it turns out I was, I do like talking and telling stories. And I turned out to be quite good at English in the way of writing stories. My grammar and spelling was terrible back then.
Really? Yeah. I didn't know that either.
No, it was probably pretty ordinary. It probably only got good when I started to write a lot of articles for national magazines, and they obviously wouldn't accept them if they were terrible. And then when I got the editor's job, I was like, oh, hang on a second. I'm going to have to buy a dictionary here. Yeah.
Okay, and so why are you still in comms? Like, yes, you've got the family and the stable job and everything, but why this industry still?
Look, I guess it's probably because it's always changing. The comms side of things in the years that you and I have worked in it has changed so much.
Holy dooly, yeah. I feel like a dinosaur now, man. I'm just like, these kids with all their newfangled things these days.
Like back in the day, you used to be able to just write good old press releases or feature articles, and if you got something in a magazine, holy hell.
Yep.
Now these days it's like, wow, if you haven't got however many views on your TikTok video, you're not in comms. So
yeah, landscape's changed just a touch.
Yeah. So it's the challenges of it, and the fact that, you know, like I've got into video in a big way in the last probably 5 years and really enjoy telling stories with video. Love that.
Your stuff's awesome. Yeah, I really do like it. I mean, I fucking hate video, but I do like your stuff.
Yeah, it's fun, and it's always nice to try and find different ways to tell those stories as well.
And that's it, in such a different way, like doing it in that visual aspect. But you've always been a bit of a photographer too.
Love photography. Love photography. And that's just part of telling the story too. But, and it's also, like, photography is a lot of parallels to writing. You know, everyone's seen a photo a million times of someone standing there and smiling, but if you can find a different angle, find a different way to take that photo that is visually appealing, that's original,
makes such a difference.
Huge.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, cool. So let's get into the actual main thing. We're off you now. We don't care about you anymore.
Excellent. That's
we
good.
know all about you.
That's good.
So can you describe to us, Lee, what do you call tone of voice? What do you think tone of voice is, and why is it important in copywriting?
All right. So to me, tone of voice, I think it just boils down to personality. It's the personality of whatever you're trying to get across. Whether that's a brand, what's the personality of the brand, whether that's the personality of the storyteller, or the personality of just about anything. Like, and you know, corporate identity is a really boring word for having a corporate personality. You know, at the end of the day, it's what do you want your audience to see you as? How do you want them to see you?
And why is that important, do you think, when it comes to our copywriting?
I think it's a really fine line, because at the end of the day, we write because we want people to read it. We write because we want...
We're not just doing it for our health.
100%. We want an audience. And so writing something factual and getting information out there is all well and good, but if no one wants to read it, if it's boring and there's no element of fun to it...
What's the point?
Well, your audience is going to be very limited.
That's it. If you've got something great to say, but you can't communicate it well, people are going to tune out before you actually get your message across.
Exactly right. And at the end of the day, you need to be able to have enough fun with it, or have enough personality in there that people want to read it, but also that you don't lose that element of trust. You know, you can be too silly, you can go too far, and you lose that credibility, especially with a corporate identity, because, you know, if you be a little bit too silly, people go, I don't know if I really trust their product.
And it's a balance, man.
Exactly right.
It is.
100%.
And like you said, it's also like, for some brands, though, they might actually have quite a professional, say even traditional. I mean, you think about council.
Yep.
Council does need to have quite a corporate sort of identity, because people need to have faith that council are making decisions that are going to set us up in the long term, etc. And if you're, you know, but that doesn't mean that you want it to be stale or boring or
100%.
bland.
One of the examples I always give when we talk about this subject is, if you haven't had a look, go and have a look at the QPS, the Queensland Police Service Facebook page.
That's one of my favourite examples too.
Exactly. It is one of the best examples of tone of voice done well.
Have you seen them actually present?
No, I haven't.
So when I was at council, I went to a local government conference, and the guy who started that whole thing for QPS, the head of their comms team, was one of the speakers at the conference.
Right.
He was fucking amazing. And just the examples he gave, like, they had no budget. And it was just like whatever they got through, they just had to think of things that were interesting and different, and nothing could go through if it was bland or boring. And they all held each other accountable as well. It was really interesting, the operational logistics for how they managed to set that fantastic tone of voice that they've got.
Yeah, it's an amazing tone of voice in the fact that they talked to me before, they said, you've got to find that line between being fun enough but also maintaining your audience's trust.
Because it's the cops.
Exactly right.
You don't want to not trust the cops.
If you're listening, if you're reading that and going, these guys are a bunch of wallies, you're not going to do whatever the public messaging is. But if you go, good one, QPS, that's really cool. But you're going to read on, and you're also going to keep getting it on your feed because you're interacting with it. You're reading it. It's really
and I just think too, it kind of what they did with the most simple, they would just have one of them, for example, there was a photo of a balloon getting stuck in a drain, and it was all, and they were talking about and they used it to talk about gate crashes, and I was just that's so simple, but so just it wasn't this big ad budget. It was just
fun.
Yeah, it was just putting some thought and effort into things. I think that's what people forget sometimes. They kind of yes, you need money to make things happen and amplify your message, but you've got to put thought and effort into stuff before you put the money on it.
Exactly right. So my background's fishing, and obviously your audience in fishing was always fishermen. Not being sexist, but back then it definitely was fishermen. Fisherwomen are very much coming along now. But one of the oldest and best known fishing writers, a guy by the name of John Mondora, and he just had the gift for the gab. And I remember saying to him, I said, what's your secret? What do you do? And he said, well, young fella, I always vision when I'm telling a story, I always vision I'm sitting at a bar, 5 schooners deep, and I'm telling the story to the bloke next to me. And he said, because it'll be a true story, but there's just that level of embellishment, that little bit of exaggeration there that makes it fun.
Makes it pop.
Yeah, it makes it fun. And you could read it. You'd read his stories, and it was like you were there with him, and that it was, real adventure sort of stuff because it had that little bit of a level of embellishment to it. But I always loved that.
So you're trying to tell us that council lies? Am I picking up what you're putting down correctly there? Council is lying to us?
Which part? No.
No, that was just for fishing stories, no other stories.
No,
okay.
I definitely
Important point of clarification.
Definitely don't get 5 schooners deep before writing press releases these days.
I should hope not to. That would be kind of fun to do as an experiment.
Maybe not.
It's you're particularly stuck on one that's about art or something. You're just sink a couple and see what comes out.
Yeah. And you didn't have to drink, but you just had to pretend. Put yourself into that situation. And that only works for a specific audience. It will not work for every audience. But if you are thinking about your audience and it is your blokey blokes and all that, it's not a bad persona to get into.
Well, that leads me to my next question then about helping people identify tone of voice. So that's one of the first questions. Like I said, we got a lot of FAQs about this. That's probably one of the first questions we get from people is how do I figure out my tone of voice? How do I, actually create that? And my advice is more around not about creating it, it's about discovering it.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
I think it comes down to it's that marketing psychology. It's being able to look at your audience and go, okay, this is my product, this is my message, this is my story. Who's my audience going to be? And then being really stereotypical of that and go, all right, it might be a lot of things, but in the majority group, this is what's going to be. And
my primary target market. Could have lots of different people interested, but who's the primary target market?
But if I had to give my target a name and say what they are, say we're selling women's clothing, you know what I mean? It's going to be a woman in her 30s, with these interests. Okay, that is your audience. Then you go back and you go, okay, well, if that is my audience, who does she relate to? Who does she, who is she going to get her advice from when she has her morning coffee? When she's sitting down, who's going to tell her what's cool to wear at the moment?
And that's it. A woman like that is probably her peers. It's her mates. It's her friends. That's, we snap photos in, I don't know if men do this, but snap photos in dressing rooms and send it to our girlfriends to give advice back on whether we should buy the thing or not.
100%. So, that all of a sudden becomes your voice. You are the friend who is giving her fashion voice that she trusts, that already has a really good grasp of fashion, etc., etc. bringing it to council, if all of a sudden we're telling people that we need them to not use water this night because all of a sudden there's going to be a catastrophic water closure outage, who are they going to trust to deliver that message? Quite often it's the mayor, it's the people who are right up in the plumbing department who are experts in their field. And you have to, we're obviously not talking as the mayor, but we're delivering messaging in a corporate voice that people can trust, and we're getting all our messaging from those people so we can deliver it in that voice.
Yeah, cool. That's some really practical tips. Well done, Lee.
Nice. Happy to help.
I just hope that everyone's listening so that sinks in, and then I don't have to teach them.
Too easy.
So I guess, we've talked about a few different styles and everything here. We're talking about like press releases and articles and, messaging in general. I guess, do you find like when it comes to tone of voice, do you adapt that for different formats? So like if you're writing website copy versus a media release versus social media posts, or is it something that just stays the same throughout? Like how do you adapt? If you pick one particular tone of voice that you're really comfortable writing and you think about, okay, I write different formats for that, how do you adapt it to those different formats? Or is it just that same mindset each time?
Good question. And it comes back to that side of the format of writing. I would say mostly if you have identified the tone of voice that you want for your organisation, brand, whatever, hold to that tone of voice as much as you possibly can. But there will always be exceptions.
I agree. I think consistency is important, but you can't be rigid either. 100%. Need to still be flexible.
Yes, and you also need to write for the publication that you're targeting. At the end of the day, if you're writing a press release about something your business is putting out for a newspaper, you can't go in with this super fun biased tone, because at the end of the day they're running news.
It needs to sound like an actual journo's reporting.
100%. So you need to make things balanced. By all means, you can slip in a couple of really fun quotes from your COO,
and that's what your quotes are for. They are to bring that personality to a media
100%.
Release as well.
But you've got to all of a sudden you've got to dial things back, find a corporate tone, find something that's maybe a journalistic tone, but then still find a way to insert those bits of personality. A bit of fun.
Okay. Cool. All right. So top tips for getting in the zone. So this is another big one for us. I've been doing this not just with tone of voice, but with our team on productivity and getting into like a good state of mind for working. So there's certain things that I do when I'm like, all right, I'm going to sit down and get some fucking shit done. And there's a few different things I do to just help my brain get ready and in that zone. And I think you can do the same thing with tone of voice, because especially like, having to slip in and out of different personalities, it does take conscious effort, I reckon. So what are your tips for how you slip in and out of those different tones of voice?
Yeah, so look, writing in general is something that you need to be in the right frame of mind for. I've got a young son at the moment who keeps me up a lot at night, so sleep deprived a lot of the time.
You don't look it. I couldn't tell.
No,
I mean, fresh as a daisy, like always.
So daisy.
So daisy.
So daisy. But you got to write when you're sharp. You can't write when you're tired, because at the end of the day, if you're trying to get into that other persona, you need to be able to think, you need to be clear.
I can only write my own stuff when I'm tired.
100%.
So like Wild Oats gets written like 5:30 Thursday afternoon for the Friday morning scheduling.
And that's what I was trying to say. 100%.
I'm the only voice that I can write when I'm tired.
When you're tired, that is the only voice in your head.
Exactly. It's
and
just
you'll get it out. That's fine.
Exactly.
That's exactly right. But
plus, it's my own stuff. It doesn't matter. It's fine.
But you did. I used to do the same thing with editorials. At the end of the week, you'd have a couple of scotches and you'd write the editorial while you're tired. And it'd always come out good. It was fine. But if you need to write
as someone
else, you need to be fresh, you need to be clear-headed. And as far as actually getting into that voice, I think it comes with consuming something that they have put out. Like you need to, if it's a person you're trying to write or something, you need to listen to them, talk to them, go and have an interview, just sit down, have a coffee with them.
Get to know the people. It makes such a difference 100%. With our team when they get to meet, because obviously I meet clients all the time, but the team team aren't always there in those first meetings or whatever. So as soon as I can, I introduce them because as soon as they, like, you know, if someone was writing for you, as soon as they meet, like I can say, oh, you know, Lee's really laid back, he's really fun, he's like a really nice guy. But when they actually, I mean, I don't mean any of it, I'm lying completely, obviously. But when they meet you, they can get a real sense of you sort of thing, and that makes it easier for them to then write, you know, for your brand or whatever it might be.
So good example, we touched it. So one of my jobs is I've got to write things about art exhibitions. And as a guy who writes fishing articles for a living for a very long time, you can imagine I don't have a lot of skills in that area. I don't particularly...
What a wonderful opportunity for you to learn.
I'm not an art appreciationist. To me, I look at a lot of modern art and I go, yeah, sorry.
That's okay.
I'm not.
We'll forgive you.
But it's I've got to be able to portray a level of fun and a level of passion for that subject.
You got to find the interest in something 100%. That doesn't naturally interest
you.
you.
And so what I do is rather than use my own passion, because generally I don't have any for that, I go and talk to someone who has passion for it.
And channel it.
Try to.
Yeah.
So literally I'll go and interview the author, the artist or the curator, and I'll get them to walk me through it. And I'll listen to everything they say and I'll listen to what they get really excited about and then I'll use that to craft what I'm trying to say, and I'll use their passion because I don't really have it myself. But I appreciate it in other people.
Oh, I agree with you so much. I think that's what I love about businesses sort of thing. Like, you know, like we do work for 50 million accountants and engineers. Like there's certain clients where we've got double ups of quite a lot sort of thing. And, you know, so you're like, oh, you know, how do you craft a different brand personality for 5 different accountants? And it's like, because I know the people, you know, and when they're talking about things, I can see what lights up there, like which part means a lot to them and whether that's something they find really fun or, you know, something they find very significant because of personal history or whatever it might be. There's always certain triggers where you're like, that's what makes this so important to you, or that's what really clinches it for you. And yeah, you just got to observe that and take note of it and then try and channel that into all of their, well, for us it's obviously their marketing collateral.
Yeah, exactly right. And like coming back to fun, like, you know, you've just got to find what people find fun. You know, at the end of the day, in the arts community, there's certain things that they love that really appeal, and that if you find that fun, sell it, use it. That's your grab, that's your hook.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, finding a hook for things. That's another one that I have to teach quite a bit about. Actually, like, we can't just tell a story because a story is not just a relaying of fact. A story actually has, like, you know, here's the intrigue, here's the angle, here's the hook, and then here's how it was resolved. And you've got to like figure that stuff out.
Definitely. And tone of voice.
It sounds really challenging when you talk about it, but it's really fun to do.
It is.
I love writing.
Yeah, I'm saying, and look, that's why I think back to my time as a feature writer for a paper where we were literally talking about a lot of boring things.
Excuse me, pie vans are amazing.
Pie vans were probably actually one of the more exciting things, to be honest. I only remember.
Might have oversold it with the pie van.
I only remember the pie van because it was mildly interesting. There was ones I've forgotten.
The first website I ever wrote was on bolts.
Yeah.
Literally bolts.
Yeah.
That was hard.
There will be something out there that someone finds really cool about that bolt.
Yeah, dude, and people get really into like knowing the particulars and stuff, whatever, and to me it all looks the same, but each their own.
Find someone who loves bolts and just channel it out of them.
I agree. Cool. All right, so if we're going to wrap this all up, I want to leave one bonus tip with our audience about tone of voice, whether it's finding it, constructing it, using it. What's something that you really just want to leave people with today so that they remember?
I think that once again it's the fun. Try and find something that, you know, generates passion with your audience, that makes them want to read it, makes them want to come on the journey with you, read the copy that you're writing, but at the end of the day, you still need to maintain that trust.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. And I think fun is a great way of connecting with people, but maintaining your credibility, maintaining that trust is, you can't, you need to balance it between the two.
Definitely.
Cool, awesome. Thank you so much for coming on, Lee. I really appreciate it.
Fun.
And I think I was pretty nice to you for most of that too. I hardly insulted you at all. So yeah, we might need a redo.
Maybe a few drinks next time. You always insult me.
Actual drinks. Thank you so much for joining us as well. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Marketing and Margaritas. Find more free marketing tips, tricks and laughs at rebelnation.com.au.